Hello everyone, welcome to PRP Coding YouTube channel. I am Raveendran Pillai. In this session, I shall explain how to build an ASP.NET Core Web API which streams data from a CSV file using IAsyncEnumerable. So let's start. I have created a .NET Core console application project and an ASP.NET Core Web API project. Both the projects are opened in my Visual Studio 2022. First, let me explain the ASP.NET Core Web API project, that is the streaming API. If I expand this project here, you can see that it contains a controllers folder, a data folder, a models folder, and a services folder. In the controllers folder, it contains an empty API controller named file controller. In the data folder, it contains a customers.csv file with 15 records. Each record represents the customer ID, first name, last name, and country. In the models folder, it contains a customer class with ID, first name, last name, and country as properties. In the services folder, it contains an interface named iFileOperationService and a class FileOperationService which extends the iFileOperationService interface. In the program.cs, here you can see that I have added the iFileOperationService as a scoped service into the dependency injection container. Okay, so now what I'm trying to do here is that the application will fetch each record from the customers.csv file and immediately stream that record to the client which consumes the streaming web API endpoint. This can be achieved by the IAsyncEnumerable interface. IAsyncEnumerable is a powerful feature introduced in C# 8 which allows to work with a sequence of data asynchronously. IAsyncEnumerable provides a way to iterate over an IEnumerable collection asynchronously while using the yield operator to return data as it comes in. Okay, so now as a first step, let me add a contract to the iFileOperationService. So here I can say IAsyncEnumerable, which is expecting a customer as output. So here I can say customer. Okay, so let me import the namespace. And here I can say get customers async, and I will pass string file path. Okay, so here I am using IAsyncEnumerable and not IEnumerable interface. Now let me implement this interface in the file operation service. Okay, it's a red squiggly. Let me right click, quick actions and refactorings, implement interface. And as a first step, let me make this method as async, and let me remove this code and let me paste the code here. Now let me explain this code. As a first step, I have created a stream reader object which is pointing to this file path. Okay, then I have created a customer record with initial value as null. Then I have used a while loop. Now here I have used await reader.readLine async. So this will go and read each line in the file path. Now, and that is assigned to customer record. Now, if that record is not equal to null, then go and process this. Now here I have splitted the customer record by using a comma separate. This is a CSV file. Then I have used an await task.delay of 1 millisecond. Okay. But still there is an error, right? Like if I hover, it says that not all code paths return a value. Okay, that makes sense. So here I need to return a customer. So here I can use the yield keyword. I can say yield return new customer ID is equal to, I will say convert dot to int 32 customer data of 0. Then I can say the first name is equal to customer data of 1, last name is equal to customer data of 2, and the country is equal to customer data of 3. This is what we need, right? Whenever we get a record or whenever we read a record from this file path, I need to immediately stream that record. So for that, I'm using the IAsyncEnumerable and I'm using the yield return. Now, the next step is to consume this service in the file controller. Let's see that. In the file controller here, you can see that I have injected the ifile operation service and it is assigned to a private read-only variable underscore file operation service. Now, let me create an HTTP GET endpoint. So here I will say HTTP GET. Okay. And here I'm going to create an action method. So here I can say public IAsyncEnumerable, and it is expecting a customer. Let me import the namespace here, customer. I will give it as get customers. Okay. Now let me make this method as async. Now let me perform a for each loop. So here I can say for each var customer in underscore file operation service dot get customers async. Now inside this method we need to pass the file path. Now the file path is, let me give at the rate, it is inside a folder, data folder. I can say data slash customers dot csv. Now here you can see that we are getting an error. The error says that for each statement cannot operate on variables of type IAsyncEnumerable because IAsyncEnumerable does not contain a public instance or extension definition for get enumerator. Did you mean await for each rather than for each? To consume the IAsyncEnumerable results, we need to use the new await for each syntax, which is a new feature available in C# 8. Now, before the for each here, I can perform a wait. I can say a wait for each, and here I can check. First, I will check if customer not equal to null. Then I will say yield return customer. So in order to consume an asynchronous stream of data, we can use the await for each statement. Now let me rename this endpoint as get-customer-stream. Now let me run the application and test this endpoint via Visual Studio HTTP file. In the streaming API project, there is a streaming API.http file. Now here you can see that the streaming API underscore host address is set to HTTP localhost 5000/API because our server is listening to port number 5000. And here the get request is HTTP localhost 5000/API/file/get-customer-stream. Now let me click on this send request. Awaiting response. Now here you can see that it took 15 seconds to get the response, and that too we got the entire data. Our expectation was to get each customer data in every 1 second. So what is happening here? Now, if you look at this file controller endpoint code, we have used await for each to get each customer data asynchronously. If you look at the return type of this endpoint, it is an IAsyncEnumerable. The API response itself is IAsyncEnumerable. So, if you want to get the data asynchronously, the client must perform an await for each against this API response, which is not the case with Visual Studio HTTP file or Postman or any browser. In order to consume the streaming API, I am using a .NET Core console application. In this project, it contains a customer class with properties ID, first name, last name, and country. Here I have overridden the toString method which returns the customer ID, the full name, and the country. Now let me open the program.cs file. In the program.cs file, it contains a method named getCustomerStreamAsync. So let me explain the code. First, I have assigned the API URL to the running API endpoint HTTP localhost 5000/API/file/get-customer-stream. Then I have created an object of the HTTP client. Then I have invoked this API URL using the HTTP client.getAsync method, and it is assigned to a message response variable which is of type HTTP response message. Here I have made sure that the response is a successful message. A successful response. Then I have serialized the response content by calling the read as stream async, which returned a stream that represents the content as an asynchronous operation, and it is assigned to a variable response stream of type stream. Then I have created a JSON serializer options object with property name case insensitive is set to true, default buffer size is set to 128. Then I have used the JSON serializer.deserialize async enumerable of customer method. This method is used to deserialize a stream of JSON data into a sequence of customer objects. This method takes two parameters. One is the response stream and the other one is the JSON serializer options. The JSON serializer.deserialize async enumerable of customer method returns an asynchronous enumerable sequence of customer objects. This means that the deserialization process will be performed asynchronously, allowing the program to process the customer data as it becomes available. Then I have used an await foreach. The await foreach loop is used to iterate over the customer sequence asynchronously. It awaits each customer object as it becomes available and then prints it to the console using console.writeLine. Now, here you can see that then I have invoked this method await get customer stream async. Now let me run the web API project as well as the console application project. Okay, so let me start the web API project. So here I can say .NET run. Okay, and here you can see that the application is listening in localhost port number 5000. Now let me run the console application project. So I can say .NET 1. So let me scroll up. We got the response. Now it took 15 seconds to get the response, and that too we got the entire data. This is exactly the same response that we got when we tested the web API project by using the Visual Studio HTTP file. So what is happening here? This is the default behavior of HTTP client.getAsync method. There are some overloads for this getAsync method. Okay, now in this overload here you can see that there is an HTTP completion option. So an HTTP completion option value indicates when the operation should be considered completed. The HTTP completion option is an enum with two possible values. It controls at what point operations on HTTP client should be considered completed. Now, here I can say HTTP completion dot, here it is response content read. So this is the default behavior. The default value is response content read, which indicates that the operation should complete only after having read the entire response, including the content. This is the reason why we are getting the records after 15 seconds. So it is waiting for the response to get the entire data from the web API. But this is not what we need. So here there is a second option. Here I can say HTTP completion option dot, there is a response headers read. The response headers read returns control to the caller earlier as soon as the response headers have been fully read. The body of the response may not be fully received at this point. With the HTTP completion change, let me run the client console application again. So I'm running the command .NET run. This time we are getting the customer records asynchronously. So let me wait for the record. So after every second, we are getting a customer record. So customer 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. That's it. So this is all about streaming data from a data source using the IAsyncEnumerable interface. If you find this video helpful, then please like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel and stay tuned for the next updates. Thank you.